For the first time in history, our nation is graduating 80% of its young people. Still, millions of students need support in order to reach high school graduation. So how do communities support these students in order to improve the overall graduation rates? I'm Eric Weddle, education reporter with WFYI, and I'm here to discuss this topic with 4 area township superintendents. Join me today are Dina Cushenberry, Jeff Butts, Nikki Woodson, Nate Jones. Thank you all for having me.
Glad to be here. Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
Right. So let's kind of jump right in here because we got a lot to discuss. So the American Promise Alliance has set a goal of 90% of a graduation rate by 2020. And that's just within 5 years for the nation. Indiana is just on the cusp of hitting that. And I know 3 of your districts here have already gone past that 90 mark. So I was kind of wondering if first we could start talking about how you, maybe Jeff, how you reach that percent and how you're hoping to sustain that going forward.
And we were very intentional when Indiana changed the graduation calculation in 2006 is when we changed that calculation. We went from counting the number of seniors that came in to the number of seniors that graduated or walked across the stage at the end of that year to truly looking at a full cohort rate. So it's a 4-year graduation rate for a cohort. Part of that also was us being really intentional about tracking data. So we had to track our students, those that were coming in, students that left us, students that came in new, students who maybe we were not able to find after they left. And so that was an important piece. The data piece was an important piece. Even more important was obviously meeting the needs of our children, making sure that they had all of the necessary qualifications, that they met all of the standards, that they were prepared to receive that high school diploma and meet the academic standards that Indiana had put out. For us, particularly in Wayne Township, we developed what we called multiple pathways. And so we found and created different tracks or pathways that students could still attain their high school diploma, but really study something that was in their wheelhouse, something that was of interest to them, an area that they could truly pursue that would keep them engaged. And that was an important piece for us, was that engagement piece. And through that, we went from a 60% graduation rate in 2006 to this past year, 94%. We're very excited about that. We know that there's still 6% of our children that need to graduate on time. We have continued in Wayne to also offer opportunities for that 5th year and 6th year, because education does not end after that 13th year in school or the 4th year in high school. And so we're typically seeing in our district 2% growth in that 5th year with an additional 1% graduates after that 6th year, which I think is really important.
Okay. And Nate, I think you also have 94% right now. What were some of the strategies you used?
Well, first of all, it took the whole community to really achieve that. I believe it was 2003 or 2004. We took a look at the current graduation rate, and I think we were like 78%, and they were very happy with that, unfortunately. So what we decided to do is put a team together, including myself, analyzing data, and we did have to hire a couple additional individuals put on staff. I have a data integrity individual who actually right now is working on the cohort for 2017 and looking at every student and where they're currently at and how they're performing. We have articulation meetings where we actually look at every student's grades in the middle school to make sure they're appropriately placed when they go to the high school. We have 4 status meetings for just the seniors where we actually sit down with all the counselors come in. We're looking at all of our students based on whether or not they have the credits to graduate, but more importantly, are they appropriately placed in the right classes? One of the concerns that I've shared is that we talk about the graduation rate, but we forget that, like you said, if you have 6% or 8% of students who are not graduating, I feel like we failed, because that's more students that we're sending out in our public that are not really going to be able to get the right jobs to be very productive citizens. So we're currently looking at what do we do to save those few. Now, here's the other interesting piece. We all are dealing with it. We get nailed because of our special ed. We have students that obviously can never graduate because of their disabilities. And so they get certificates. That goes against us in the graduation rate. So we have a large population of those students as well. I really would guess if we really took those students out, we would probably be about 96% graduation rate. But every year we're always trying to go at least 0.5% higher, and that could include 2 or 3 additional students trying to save them.
And before we kind of get into the topic of the special student groups, I kind of want to stick on the 90% and see, does it helpful to you to have, I guess, a target? You know, I mean, do you need to have a target, or are you just always going for 100%?
We're
no matter
always
what?
going for 100%. Yeah, always 100%. I think what we really looked at is who are those students in middle school, 8th grade, who are going into 9th grade, and really cleaning our data up, because basically it's a data decision, and so that's what we really look at, where our students are, who's dropping out. And then we go after those dropout students, and then we make sure they're placed somewhere. So we want to know what 100% of our students are doing at all times.
Absolutely. And it's about continuous improvement. I mean, I know the nation right now is stuck on grades and percents and targets and goals, but that depends on where somebody starts. You've got a wide range of graduation rates in the state of Indiana that equal to an average, but that constitutes a wide range. Continuous improvement for one high school may look completely different than continuous improvement at another. So we're constantly striving, I know in Marion County, certainly at North Central High School, for continuous improvement from wherever we are to keep improving from there.
But don't you also think that it's a really unfair comparison to really look at one school versus another school in
Absolutely.
terms of graduation rate?
So many complexities.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was going to bring. When I think of the townships being compared to IPS school, how unfair. Or the townships being compared to the suburbs like a Carmel, how unfair. You know, we are working with the student population that we have.
Absolutely.
That's my direct intentions. Direct for Pike High School. I'm happy for North Central, but I have no concerns for North Central. I only serve the kids that I have.
Right.
And I hate that comparison because our populations are so different, you know?
But because our students go in and out of the townships, we do have a structure in place where we're always capturing those students. So I think that's important.
One of the conversations that typically comes up when we talk about graduation rate is the waiver versus non-waiver rate, and that may have been a question that you were going to ask us about. In the state of Indiana, our General Assembly set up a process by which those students who are not good test takers, that may not be able to reach that benchmark on that specific assessment, still can demonstrate proficiencies within that course that is required for them to graduate. And that teacher and a committee at the end of the year, at the end of their senior year, goes back and checks on attendance, checks on discipline, checks on the number of times they went through remediation and took the examination, the grade point average that they had, and talks directly to those teachers that had them in those courses that can verify, yes, that student met all of the state requirements that were of them to make sure that they could get that high school diploma. And so I know there's a lot of conversation that goes on about that, but in all of our high schools, there's a very rigorous process to award those exemptions and give those students the waivers to be able to graduate on time.
There is a lot of local control, however,
There
with that
is.
process. I agree, in Marion County, we each have rigorous processes. North Central has ranged from 9 to 11% graduation waivers annually, and that's because of the rigorous process that the waiver requests have to go through.
But it seems in the past few years there's been a lot of focus on kind of reducing those waivers for everyone. It seems maybe 8-10 years ago it was much more common than it is now. I think people see the impact it can have on some students who you can't push forward. And it seems that kind of goes back into the issue of the data, kind of finding what students on the cusp and not what students you can push forward. I mean, are you using that kind of data to find the students who
Absolutely.
maybe would want a waiver, but you're saying, no, if you get a little bit more help, you can pass this test, you can get the ECA done and graduate?
Sure. Something that I needed to get back in touch with were the actual students. And so last year, I charged my entire cabinet, all my division leaders at the district level, to serve as graduate mentors. Twofold. One, to be a mentor to those seniors who are on the cusp, on the bubble. Also, for us to learn about our own process by living it with a student. And so it was an eye-opening year for us. We learned a whole lot about our own system. Sometimes for a high school principal, a high school counselor, high school teacher, they're in the system, that it's hard for them to step out and see areas that can be improved. So it was a really great learning experience for us to do that hands-on. Our students have a lot of challenges they deal with every single day. and sometimes high school is the least of their worries. So it is a matter of wraparound supports that we have to provide for our students, not just academic supports.
And to just follow up on that, we looked at our high school and we divided our students into 4s. And so we have cohort groups in the high school, and those students will follow those administrators all the way through to their senior year. So that way they have relationships with the counselors, with the teachers, all the way through. If parents have concerns, if students have concerns, because a lot of it is relationships. Trust with families, trust with students, someone saying, you can do this kind of thing.
Yes.
So.
Now, Pike took another component and put in place because we were looking at reducing waivers as well. However, we will never get rid of them because there are some students, as someone has already said, they are able to do the classwork, but when they take the ECA, for whatever reason, they're just not good test takers. So we have a Pike Preparatory Academy that's really year-round. So those students that we have identified as needing additional support or needing a little longer to be able to take that test and have the preparation. So they're going to the Pike Preparatory Academy, which allows them then that additional support they need, which has really reduced now the waivers and increased the graduation rate for Pike.
And we're starting to rethink expulsions and how that looks. You know, instead of a student being put out of school, now we're saying, okay, you're close to graduation, let's do some technology. So a lot of kids we put in a personalized situation versus suspending or expelling them.
We offer an extended day program similar to what Dr. Cushenberry is talking about that operates 4 nights a week. We have 5 teachers in there. It's a blended learning model, so it's a digital curriculum along with the teachers that are there to assist the students as they go through. And that has been our alternative to expulsion. We've shifted those students out of a traditional day program, out of the brick and mortar high school and into that extended day program so that they can continue on and can be successful and graduate on time. You know, one of the things that I think also is important for us, at least in the conversations we've had, our success, while we're very proud of all of our graduation rates, our success does not end when we hand that student that diploma in June. Our success continues on when we know that our students have been able to take that and be successful. We've heard a lot about college and career readiness. We've heard a lot about students having to take remedial courses in college and not being prepared for the workforce and all of those things. And if you backward map that and you look at this assessment system that we currently have, and we know there are all kinds of issues in the state of Indiana with what we're utilizing for assessment at this point, and think about the focus when No Child Left Behind came into play in 2001, we all shifted our focus to make sure our students were able to pass the tests on time. We got away from some of those basic skills that workers and our businesses are calling for, that our career and college readiness definitions really call for. And so we've also started to shift how we're preparing our children throughout their high school experience and backward mapping that into middle school and elementary school, so that those soft skills that we used to focus a great deal on prior to No Child Left Behind and PL 221, which came into place in 1999, to make sure that our students are ready, that they have that responsibility, that they have that self-advocacy, that they know to be on, work on time or know how to get their assignments done. We have made sure that our students can't fail because we know how important that 4-year graduation rate is. And in doing that, we've wrapped them with supports. We've given them interventions. We've made sure that they have every opportunity possible. That doesn't happen when they leave our buildings. When they walk out of our district, that will not happen in their workforce. It will not happen in their colleges and universities. And so I think that's where we've seen a little bit of this disconnect because we've made sure students can't fail. Then we send them out. And so it's a systemic process. I think the funding changes that have happened at the higher education level are changing that a little bit. Our universities are having to look at how they serve students differently. But in the current system, our students receive a whole lot more support in the P12 system than they are outside of it.
And that's what I wanted to get to right now. So the Grad Nation report, which is like the nation's report card on graduation, has kind of flagged some groups of students that need to have their rates risen to kind of hit that 90%. And some of those include students of color, students with disabilities, and students in poverty. And I'm sure we could sit here for hours and talk about poverty.
Absolutely.
What, I guess, in terms of poverty, what are you doing right now to kind of help those these issues that are brought into the classroom, into the school.
We've started what we call a system. It's a positive behavior support system. And in that system, we work with students, and we took a full year teaching the behaviors and all the things that we wanted students to understand: how to be perseverant, how to be, have some grit, how to fail and make it okay. Because that's the one thing what Mr. Butts was just talking about. Students don't know how to fail. And they all believe that they have to have a certain grade or whatever. But right now we're graduating 89% of our students in poverty, which is great. So it's teaching students, it's teaching parents, and as I read that report, it said it's going to take 2 generations in order for students to get out of poverty. So how do you start educating them about that now? So that's kind of some of the things that we're doing.
I'm going to come off the students and go with the teachers and the administrators, because before you could take a group of students from level A to level B, you had to have a staff that understands poverty and the issues with that. So let's go back to what Dr. Butts said earlier, or it could have been you, Dina. The relationship is probably one of the most important components to really change the culture of any school system or individual schools or a child's life. And it does take all of us to work on that through constant professional development, having those really courageous conversations with staff. We're having one next week with the biases of teachers toward African American kids. We have to have those conversations. Even though the majority of my students are of color, the majority of my staff, it would not reflect my students. So we're going to have some very candid conversations to continue so they begin to understand the differences that are coming into those classrooms. And if you just build a relationship, if you know I care about you, you're going to do 100% more for me than if you just worry about the content that I'm teaching. So it has to come from the heart.
And is there a shift now that you're able to have those conversations in school?
Absolutely.
It's about leadership. It's about leadership.
Yeah, we really have no choice. Ironically, in our districts, and I think it's true in all of our districts, our students who are not in poverty are the minority. 80% of the children in our district, in Wayne Township, are living in poverty. 70% are qualifying for free, another 10% are qualifying for reduced. Ironically, in the 2014 graduation cohort, which is the last data that we have available, 99% of my students on reduced lunch graduated on time. 95% who are free graduated on time. We're struggling most with those students who are not on free and reduced lunch, which is interesting. Why? We don't know. That's a great question for us to have. We're addressing all students in the same way and trying to meet the needs of all of our children, but our data is showing that our students who are not in poverty are the ones who are not graduating at as high of a rate as our other students.
In what role, I think for you in Wayne Township, you're kind of reaching out to a lot of religious groups and churches. What role does those community groups have, I guess, all of your districts, to kind of offer either wraparound support services or just mentors? I mean, I guess, Wayne, what are you doing right now with those churches that you've been talking with?
Yeah, it's interesting. We really have focused on the relationship between the school and the community. And I had a parent just last week ask me, are all the districts around doing the same things? And I would say to some degree that is true in different ways, depending on the community and the community demographics and the makeup of those. We believe our faith-based community is very important in what we're doing because they can also embed our messages into their outreach and into their the lives that they touch, and whether or not they even live within our school district, we think that those messages can transcend out into other communities as well. But we have really said that our schools cannot be successful without the partnerships that we have with our community, including businesses and our faith-based organizations, civic groups. In the same way, our community cannot be successful if we don't have successful schools. And so there is a direct relationship there, and it's been very important for us to develop that and have regular meetings and share information and be embedded in all of our organizations. We joke that my wife and I don't get to our home church very often in the beginning of the school year because we're traveling to other churches and sharing information.
And then in Warren Township, I mean, in terms of the money you receive from the Race to the Top grant, how has that helped you to kind of reach out in the community?
Oh, absolutely. We do a lot with Community Hospital. We have some dental assistance kind of things in our Career Center. We also have what's called extended learning opportunities, and we work with Lilly, and our students have competency-based kinds of objectives there. And then they go to school in the morning, afternoon they work, so they're getting some of that real life experience. We do ACE, which is a architect, and have a lot of those mentors. So throughout our community, we've used that Race to the Top money, and we've really done great work. We also have a production company. Our students are working side by side with folks throughout the state on just different activities, learning about new technologies. So we've been fortunate, and just a lot of new learning spaces for students. And
I'd imagine a lot of schools are kind of jealous in a way that you got this, that you have these fundings to do what you want to do. So I was kind of wondering, to what end, is funding, is that the answer to a lot of success, or is it being creative?
Absolutely not. It's about being able to take that money, having time to plan. The one thing I would say about Race to the Top, we had timelines, and we were not able to really think through a lot of things. We purchased technology that if we had another year, another technology would have come out and it would have been probably a little better. So with that comes a lot of red tape, a lot of timelines, a lot of things you have to do before students and maybe teachers are really ready. But we've learned a lot. We've learned a lot of lessons, and I think that's what it was all about, learning lessons. And we'll be able to sustain some of those things, and then there are some things that we won't, and we'll have to prioritize in our district. So
funding does matter, however, and we've all had to get very creative in building in the supports we've all talked about. Supports cost money. Extra relationships, building with students cost staff, and staff cost money. In Washington Township, and I believe several Marion County school districts have foundations. Ours is the Advancement Center, so it's a foundation concept and an alumni center who has merged. And before, they used to provide niceties to our high school and to our other schools that they support, and now they are transitioning to providing some necessities instead of just the niceties. So it is taking a shift, and funding does absolutely matter to the services that we can provide.
So I know right now we're talking all about graduation, kind of those issues, but I kind of want to turn back to pre-K. Right now here in the city and in the state, we're starting the first ever funded pre-K programs. How vital is that, starting then, to get kids to graduate into college? What would you say is going on?
It's very important. Our students come to us with limited vocabulary. And so early childhood would give them some of those experiences just to kind of level the playing field. And I think more than anything, it's more of an experience gap versus a true, knowledge gap. I think if our parents didn't have to work 2 and 3 jobs, they would have time to spend with their children. But they just don't have that time. And so a pre-K experience would certainly give the, students access to professionals who could really do some of that for them.
And as I love the pre-K conversation, we can't skip over K. K is still not required. Kindergarten is still not required in the state of Indiana. So I would start there by requiring kindergarten in the state of Indiana, like many other states across the nation, and then add focus and funding to pre-K.
I think pre-K is extremely important.
Yeah.
Do you think
I think we're all agreeing that it's important, but I would say kindergarten for me right now would be my primary focus. If we can get every student that should be in kindergarten, especially with our curriculum that we have, and I'm saying curriculum for all of Marion County, I think that you could start seeing some tremendous growth for graduation rates, because it does start with It doesn't start in 9th grade for graduation rates. In addition to that, that would help us to really start getting those families into our schools and building those relationships. I don't care what anyone says, the school can't do it all. We have to have support from that family or those homes. And it doesn't mean that has to be mom and dad either. Right now, I would say about 40% of our poverty students that are coming from poverty are being reared right now by grandmothers. I don't know if you guys are experiencing that, but we get more grandmothers coming in for open house and parent conferences than I've ever seen. So we're going to really need to look at how to connect with those individuals and help them, because they're really struggling right now.
And this might have to be the final question, but So what you're saying is there are people who just are not sending their students to kindergarten. That seems to be a debate that we've seen in the State House. People aren't sure if it's happening. You're all saying
I don't see that.
You don't see that? Do you see that happening in your district?
Where we have kindergarten.
Who are not attending kindergarten? Is that?
Well, our numbers indicate that they're coming. But I know we still have a few that are not there, you know.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And we're in metropolitan area of the state. You'd have to look at the statewide data, first graders, to see how many were connected to a kindergarten.
And so what would you say to families in the community? How can they help you do your jobs, help the teachers, help the district?
It's very basic for us is that, one, communicate with us.
Yes.
That's the very basic. Number two, get involved in everything that we're doing to support your child. And then third, don't be afraid to be an advocate for your own child. And that's the part that I think people that are not as educated are still intimidated with the school environment. Now, I see that. Do you guys see that? Or maybe
Sure. And tell us what you need.
And
Tell us what you need.
Tell us what
Absolutely.
you need. Tell us what your children, how we can support your children.
Everyone, thank you very much. So now we want you at home to get involved. Find out more by visiting amgrad.wfyi.org. Also, you can follow this conversation on social media by using the hashtag AmGradIndy. For WFYI, I'm Eric Weddle. Thanks for joining us.